We probably start by introducing ourselves. So hi to everyone from the SD Eastcon. I'm not sure who you are, who you watching this, but I would say hi. I am Fred Serval.
And I am Brian Train. Greetings from the past.
Yes, and Harold asked us to discuss about what we think about the future of wargaming. And Brian and I were supposed to have a quick game of his 2010 abstract game, Guerrilla Checkers. So we thought we could discuss about the future of wargaming while we were playing a game of Guerrilla Checkers. But before we talk about the future of wargaming, can you explain me quickly the rules of the game?
Oh, sure. So this game is, in this game, you have 6 counterinsurgent pieces, and they're arranged on an 8x8 grid, and you have 66 guerrilla pieces. Now, this is, in its basic form, this game is kind of like a mashup of checkers and Go. Because these counterinsurgent pieces, they move like kings in checkers. So they move 1 square diagonally in any direction, and they can jump over the guerrilla pieces. Now the guerrilla pieces are placed not in the squares, so the counterinsurgents go in the squares, but the guerrilla pieces are placed on the joints in between the squares, so that when they jump over like this one is captured and it's out of the game. So the objective is for one side to annihilate the other. So the way the guerrilla captures or eliminates a counterinsurgent is to surround them on all 4 corners, and then it's taken away. And of course, for the counterinsurgent, they simply jump. Now, the important thing to remember is that when they jump, if they can keep jumping, they have to keep jumping. So that, they can choose the path that they take, but as long as it's possible for you to keep capturing, you have to keep going. That's an important thing in the game, because it often ends up that the counterinsurgent will have jumped themselves into a corner where the guerrilla can do a snapback and capture him. So it's like chasing yourself into an ambush.
Because
think of it that way.
I don't place myself on intersection, so if I'm here, I would just with 1 stone, I could kill that stone.
That's correct.
And for here, I would just need 2 stones. So very much like in Go, the closer you are to the corner, the stronger you are with fewer pieces.
That's right. And it's important to note that the guerrilla does not place his pieces here. It's assumed that there's already something there. So think of it as impenetrable mountains, or the edge of the sea, or something like that. There are 6 counterinsurgents and 66 guerrillas. The way to win the game is to completely wipe one side or the other off the map at any point during the game. And that's how you win the game right away. However, if the guerrilla player runs out of pieces, the guerrilla player places 2 pieces each turn, which gives them 33 moves. And if they run out of pieces and there's still at least 1 counterinsurgent left on the board, then the guerrillas lose. And think of that as being them just running out of military or soldier wherewithal, or it's the end of the fighting season, or something like that. Okay.
And once I place 1, I have to place the second one adjacent to it?
That's correct.
Yeah. Then I guess I will do 1 here and 1 here.
Okay. And
now we can talk about the future of wargaming.
Sure.
You were part. No, go ahead.
Let me make my move first. So there, and I'm going to threaten both of you.
So tac. Interesting.
Which would win me the game right away, and you don't want that to happen.
No, probably not.
Now, I would note that if you put a piece here, it's invulnerable. Because there's
it's
no
in
way
between 2 counterinsurgents.
Yeah.
But I cannot. Well, I need to place 1 here, then here.
Yep.
And actually, as soon as you will eat this one will become. Yeah. Actually, I think that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to do 1 and 2. And yeah, so what do you think about the future of wargaming? So we had an interview earlier where you were talking about. How you started to design game out of frustration for not seeing the games that you wanted to play. And this has somewhat changed over the last few years in the way we depict warfare and the kind of topics that are being covered by designers.
You killed me.
Yes, but yeah, how do you see the future going forward from the current state that we're in?
Well, I have to say that I've been really encouraged by developments of the last 10 or 15 years.
Yeah.
By the cross-fertilization and hybridization between a lot of Euro wargame mechanics and a standard wargame mechanics, or just infusing one into the other.
Yeah.
I think there's been more movement of Euro stuff into wargames than there has been of wargame concepts into what you would call Eurogames. And I've designed a couple of games that are kind of on the border between those. An example would be Knights of Fire, which is a game that I did together with David Turtzi. Now, David Turtzi is mostly a Euro wargame designer, but he plays wargames, so he speaks enough of the dialect of wargames that it was very easy to work with him. And of course, David is an absolute genius with solo systems.
Yes.
So we had he created an absolutely brilliant solo system for Knights of Fire with only 12 cards. It's very impressive. Just 12 cards and a number of rules. Another solo system that he invented that I think is really brilliant for another game that is sort of on the border between wargame and Euro is Blitzkrieg, or World War II in 20 Minutes by Paolo Mori.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, that's a really good game. It's a clever game, in and by itself, but David's solitaire system for that game is also really, really intelligent. So it's been really encouraging to see that kind of fertilization moving into wargames. I don't want to say that war games have been the same since 1971. They haven't, obviously. But they kind of, mechanics kind of come and go. They kind of wax and wane. For example, back in the 1990s, there was the genre of card-driven game was invented. And the first one was We the People by Mark Herman. And for a while, it seemed everybody was doing a card-driven game, and that's still a really common mechanic. But I guess the bloom is off the rose for that kind of.
Do you think there is maybe options for people to revitalize some of those game systems and maybe push them in new directions? Like, could we see? Because I expect that we're going to see at some point, like. Maybe CDGs might go a bit more on the calmer side and being maybe a little bit less popular for a while, and then something else might come up.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. I mean, I'm very firmly in the let 100 flowers bloom, kind of school. I'm really, really enthused to see anything new come along. And whether it gets beaten to death, by a dozen other designers or not, it doesn't really matter. I guess the thing, one system that's really popular right now, of course, is the GMT coin system. Yeah. And people seem to be of the habit that thinking that you could take any kind of roughly asymmetrical situation with potentially 4 players or 4 factions and then make a GMT coin system out of it. Well, I don't think that really works. Yeah. The GMT coin system, it has its time, it has its place. It's not a panacea, it's not something you can apply to everything. And so I think maybe a little bit more discretion. I say that because I'm working on 2 coin system games right now. I'm finishing up one on China from 1937 to 41. And there's another one that I've worked out on Canadian politics from the 1950s up to the near future.
Also in the coin system?
Yes.
Interesting. So it is somewhat flexible,
Well, because, back in 1976, SPI put out a game called Canadian Civil War, and it was actually a 4-player power politics game, but it was kind of its time because there's an awful lot of charts and numbers and die rolls in it, and it didn't sell that well. Not least because of the subject matter, because most gamers then and now are Americans and didn't really care, what happened to Canada politically. But I wanted to do a reboot of that system because it has 4 players and 4 factions, which are not parties but tendencies or ideological currents or philosophies in Canadian politics that have come and gone over the years. And I wanted to reboot that game via the GMT coin system. So you've got 4 different factions that all have different menus of operations and special activities and so so forth. But it's completely non-violent. There's no war at all, you know. And I've always thought that the GMT coin system, as such, was always really well suited to a system of power politics, where people, where really nobody needed to get hurt at all. So I need to make my move there.
Interesting.
And by the way, I have to make my standard caveat here. I design these games, but I'm not very good at playing them. I never have been.
I would see about that. For now, you're doing okay.
My problem is I get distracted by the mechanics. You know, so
yeah, I was thinking about, we're talking about the Battle of Algiers, and I was thinking, in a way, the fact that I have to build up in a network makes it feel that as soon as you get me, you can get up to the network, and it actually becomes this intelligence warfare that have some weak points and everything.
Yeah,
which I find quite interesting.
And that's the basis for that intelligence, the square grid intelligence game I was talking to you about before, which may or may not see the light of day. We'll see.
But on my side, I think that the thing that what you're thinking about your turn that I see emerging in the future of war games, or as we said in our discussion, maybe even more political games more than war games themselves, is also the emergence of new topics. And that's actually, I think, really interesting. So you're going to have to either do this, or do this, or do this, and then you can branch out in one of those two.
Yeah. Well, an important rule is I have the choice of moving or capturing, but once I start to capture,
you don't have to capture.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, in this example, I've moved into a position where I can, but I don't have to. I could move away again or simply leave it and move somebody else. But once I start capturing, I have to keep doing it until I maneuver myself into a position where I can't anymore.
I'm going to do this and this.
Nope. The second one has to be next to the first one.
Okay. It doesn't have to be adjacent to the network itself.
No.
So the problem is if I do this and this, actually, that might be a good idea.
Yeah. So the first stone you place has to be adjacent to any stone.
Yeah, but the other one needs to be adjacent
to the second one has to be adjacent to the first. And so you see, it's kind of a little bit inspired by Go in that way. Even though in Go you make one move at a time, but in Go the stones don't move as such, so much as they flow, and so you're flowing that way.
And going back to what I was saying, I think the diversity of topics, the fact that the games, so using mechanics that we know and love, but being applied to different things. You were talking about coin games being used to do different things. You were talking about politics. There is Cross-Bronx Expressway talking about urbanism and those different things. I think it's quite interesting in that sense. So for me, that's also the future that I see, and it's also the future that I find quite exciting to see this happening. Now I'm actually a bit worried because you could do one, two. Yeah. I have quite a few options here.
Remember, I told you that if you manage to exploit unit boundaries like this, then that's an invulnerable spot.
Yeah, that's actually quite nice.
I'm not going to tell you how to play the game, but
it's just that I'm thinking
it's a tactic that people discover pretty quickly.
The problem is, where do I go? Actually, all of them would be virtually the same. I might be better off here because here I open you to this. And so that's the thing.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think about the future of wargaming is, I think what you were talking about, having more and more designers being inspired by what's happening outside of the wargaming field is also something that I find quite interesting. And also designers that are well respected in actually the historical gaming, being like there's a blurrier frontier between wargame designers and game designers. If you think about someone like Cole Wehrle, for example, like I think those kind of people, that's really inspiring. And I know that for me, as a young designer, that's also something I don't want to be stuck into wargaming. I'm happy to make card games and everything. Most of them, I think, will talk about history in a way or another, either directly or indirectly. But apart from that, I think I don't want to be stuck on a specific in a specific niche of the hobby. So I do see this kind of happening.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there are some game designers wargame designers, who tend to focus on one particular historical period. You know, there's a designer named Danny Parker, and most of his games, most or all, I'm not sure, of his games have been about the Battle of the Bulge.
Yeah.
So he's quite the scholar on the Battle of the Bulge, but that's pretty much all he designs on.
Yeah.
The wargame designer who I admire most is James Dunnigan, who was the man who started SPI. He designed well over 100 games, probably 150 games or more during the time he was in SPI. Hasn't produced anything, you know, for some time. But the kind of openness and inventiveness and flexibility, and he was kind of treading new ground and smashing old things at the same time, you know, as he went along. So that Canadian Civil War game that I mentioned, Dunnigan designed that, and until then, nobody had ever created a game quite like that.
Yeah.
He designed these power politics games, and they didn't sell well, so in the end he stopped doing them. But some of the concepts that he put into those games were just fantastic for the time. And this is from like the mid-70s.
So that's really interesting. So take your turn. I have a question as a follow-up, and it might send you on a tangent, so I want you to focus on this.
Yeah, but I'll make my move now.
Yeah.
Okay, pop.
Yeah, I expected that. The thing that you're talking about, I really like this idea, and that's something that I've been thinking about quite a lot myself. That's the idea of doing some wargaming archaeology and rediscovering things from the past that maybe we've forgotten about, or that were somewhat not really successful but I feel like there is a lot of stuff that has been done in the past that we might be able to explore and get inspired by. Yeah, that's what I was expecting you to do.
Yes. So you got me right where you want me. Yeah, you're right. And I've been playing war games for over 40 years, and so I find the archaeology just fascinating.
Yeah.
We were talking earlier today about Maurice Suckling, and Maurice is writing. I think he's writing a book.
Yeah.
And we've been talking about different kinds of games, and so Maurice will ask me, you know, what is the first game that had, you know, this kind of mechanic or explored this kind of thing, and I will do my best to remember, you know, what I think of as the first one that comes to mind. And it's a hobby with a really fascinating history of how things go, and it's well, the number doesn't matter. It's just we have to get down.
Yeah.
I have to get you down to 0.
It's your turn, by the way.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're sort of in the mid-game where I have lost a couple of people, which is normal, and now...
Don't try to diminish my achievements.
But what happens now is you're trying to build some like let's call them sort of no-go zones.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Where if I enter them, I'll be killed.
Yeah.
And so you're trying to pen me in. At the same time, I'm trying to avoid that and trying to get myself into a position where I can unzip, you know, the wall that you're building, wall or walls. So let's try this, because I don't want to get backed into a corner. Okay, and I'll move over there.
So you're gonna do 1, 2, 3, 4. Interesting. I need to think about that.
Yeah, and the thing is, there's so many examples of mechanics or concepts that may have surfaced in 1 or 2 games, 40 years ago, and were never picked up on again.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of where, why wasn't that idea picked up? Maybe the game wasn't very popular, or maybe the idea was put into the wrong kind of game. Maybe like one of the first card-driven games I can think of, examples of that, was in a game called Pentantastar. I think Pentantastar from like the mid-70s, and it's a fantasy game. and it didn't sell very well, but it is an early example of the sort of card-driven genre of where you can use a card for one purpose or another purpose. But it was a game that was published by a small press, and it was about a fantasy subject, and fantasy was never, the biggest deal.
Yeah.
And so, when Maurice was asking me about this, and I told him about this game, he said, "Oh, well, that sounds really interesting, but I never heard of it before." So there it is. Okay, let's see now. So, 1,
yeah,
2,
yeah,
and 3.
Yeah. No, you're going down.
4, 5, 6.
Yep.
But you're not out yet because you still have 2 guys left on the board.
I know, but it's still painful. We're trying a different approach. So that's going to be kind of more of the same thing.
Yeah. So pop, pop, pop.
And now, do I finally do what I wanted to do? It's hard for me. So the thing is, when I play Go, I see the shapes.
Yes.
I don't see the shapes in this yet because it's my first game. So.
Yeah. Hey, you're doing pretty well. You're 3 down already.
Yeah,
so.
But it's not. I can see this pile going down. Are you a big abstract gamer? Like or because you were talking about the fact that you learned Go when you were living in Japan. Is it something that you still play and you feel like maybe a wargame designer should be inspired by?
Well, I like Go better than chess. I'm not very good at either game. Like, as I said, I'm not very good at any game, really. Even the ones I design, I'm not particularly good at. And so it's... I like Go because of its hungry nature. You can only place one stone. You have a grid of 361 intersections, 361 places at the beginning, to put your stone down on. And of course, as the game proceeds, there's smaller and smaller sets of points where it makes sense to play. But at any point, every move you make has to do 2 jobs. It has to be a defensive stone and an offensive stone. It has to protect yourself from a threat, and it also has to pose a threat. I mean, an ideal move is like that. Would be both of those in equal measure. Now, there are times in the game, when the initiative is taken away from you and you have to play defensively for a while until the Sente comes back to you. You can play offensively again. But if you're any good at playing, then that point will come. But beyond that. It's. I also like its non-linear nature. It's not.
What would you say would be? Take your turn.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, here I am chatting away. Yeah.
Tac. Then I guess the logical would be to do tap. Be also protected by being here.
Okay, another wedgie.
What game makes you the most think about Go in?
Well, let me think. I'm not sure that there are that many games that are really... I mean, there was an old game that came out in the 1970s. It was actually a family game called the Godfather game. And it had an amusing packaging because some editions of the game, it came packaged in a box that was shaped like a violin case, to kind of suggest. Nice. Yeah. But how it was kind of an adaptation of Go in that there were 9 smaller boards on the map board that represented different sectors, different neighborhoods of a made-up city, and you got to play more than one stone or person at a time, on the different map boards. But the principles of Go were kind of the same, that you won by dominating an area, but you had 9 smaller little boards to map. So it was a bit like a game of regular Go broken down into its components, because in every game of Go, there are the joseki, which are like the different little tactical set pieces that you play to dominate the different corners or different sectors of around the edge of the board.
Communicate with each other to make an overall strategy.
Yeah, but the thing is about if you want to be any good at Go is you play these joseki are played according to a certain script, and you know you can see, when you watch professional Go players, someone plays in the corner, someone plays again, and then okay, it's the I don't know, the crane's wing joseki or something like that, and they go clack 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 and play the thing out, and because they know how to play the thing out so that black will be kind of dominant on this side, but not that side, or the other way around.
The idea of the joseki is that it's a sequence of play that will create a balance between the two players.
Yeah. And both of them are practiced, both players are practiced enough to know, you know, just how they want to manipulate the situation.
Getting to the end. But I think that's I think that can wrap up the conversation itself. We're going to finish the game.
Yes.
But for you watching us, well, is it still recording? Yes. Yeah. For you watching us, we'll do some wargaming archaeology, play some abstract games, get inspired by Eurogames, and have fun to tackle new and different topics. Just not another Battle of the Bells game, please.
Yeah.
Enjoy it. Bye bye. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Whole world out there.